People who know a compulsive liar. What ridiculous. Obviously fake. Story have they told you? The Air Force let his dad keep his jet fighter when he retired and would drop him off at the school's secret landing strip. This was junior year of high school. I grew up in a pub and we had a lot of regulars. One guy in particular was consistently lying to the point I assumed he was just 70 odd and trying to wind people up. Eventually it became clear he was just an almost pathological liar. People would tell stories about how even as a child he would claim to have a diesel-powered train set at home when shown someone's electronic one. The best lie he told me was the time he came into the pub after leaving a tab and paid for a month or two, saying he was going to pay it off at the weekend because he was about to come into some money. He'd just been digging in his garden and he found a small trove of old coins. He knew they were valuable by the dates on them and sent them to the British Museum for valuation. He said the finder's fee on the oldest one alone could cover the debt 1,000 times over. The oldest coin he found apparently had 150 BC written on it. I ain't gonna lie, it took me far too long to realize why 150 BC would not be written on a coin. One guy tried to convince me once that he had a full-blown Yu-Gi-Oh playing arena with the hologram projections and everything. Was he called Seto? I knew a guy who, among hundreds of other increasingly absurd lies, told me that he had fricked for 24 hours straight while working as a roofer in 200-degree Fahrenheit heat no less. Once fell through the roof and landed on a girl's bed next to her. Took a crap so big that it came out of the toilet and he couldn't flush it, so his German grandmother had to come into the room and cut it with scissors, shouting crap devil in German. Fricked a girl on the dance floor of a club, snorting coke out of her butt. Abruptly ended a camping trip weekend with friends because he had to get to a fake doctor's appointment. Told us he couldn't feel pain on the same camping trip and picked up a rock that popped out of the campfire ring. He held it for a second. Turns out he could feel pain. She's too full. That he and his friend have a YouTube channel with 100k subscribers, but he forgot the name since he only does the recording and editing. His friend supposedly uploads the videos. Oh, and he forgot his friend's last name, but his first name is definitely John. Turns out he's the real brains behind JonTron. In university, there was a guy who told all sort of outrageous stories about all the chicks he banged at the bar, all the girls he would take home. He was a decent guy outside it, but his stories didn't actually make him sound good in any way. It was just weird he did it, but it went from just took home this awesome blonde, to met this model and took her home, to took home 2 cheerleaders, yep man, 3-way, to man, I stepped it up, 3 chicks at the same time. But then, he told us, you know Jane, not her name, but a girl in one of our labs who we all knew and was very nerdy hot? Yes. Well, she was at the pool hall last night, and she saw me, and came over and wanted to have a game. She was pretty drunk and we got flirting and she actually bet me on a game. If I won she'd. Anyways, the thing is, I can't even remember how it went sadly, but it was my freaking story. It had happened to me the weekend before, and somehow it basically ended up with me striking out. That's the kinda guy I am. I talk about the strikeouts, but it was also a funny story. So I tell my buddies cause I finally have something worth sharing. And here is this butthole telling the story back to me, and exactly the same, even with the way he struck out. Thankfully our other friend called him out on it. That was Bill Bapapa's story, man. Are you even trying anymore with the crap you make up? The guy was mortified, and it somehow went all the way to him crying cause he was a virgin. What an idiot. My roommate told me he filled a metal trash can with 10 pounds of weed, lit it on fire, and then got high off of the smoke. I don't think he knew how impractical or absurdly expensive that would be, but he insisted that he did it. Friend at school told everyone that he was in a band and they'd recorded a song, and asked if we wanted to hear it. He had the lyrics handwritten on a piece of paper and the recording, which him and his band, that we had somehow never heard about before, had apparently done at a big expensive studio in London, on his MP3 player. He hands me an earphone and tells me to let him know what I think of it, and to be honest, and plays She Freaking Hates Me by Puddle of Mud. Ah yes, I knew one of these guys through a MMORPG we both played. We were good friends for a while, and he always had a lot of stories to tell. Most of the time these stories would be a bit over the top. They were usually pretty obviously fake, but they were not completely unfeasible. Well, except for one. See, apparently he was quite the psychological genius. In fact, he was so smart that he had created a complete map of how the human mind works. With this map, he was able to completely simulate a human personality, and so he could apply it people and predict their every reaction to a situation. Using that knowledge, he could create so-called master plans, which he'd use to get exactly what he wanted from anyone through a set of elaborate actions. It's a pretty neat ability to have, but I'm not sure why he'd use it to make me think he's full of crap. The guy I used to share a cubicle with was a compulsive liar. Just a few of his choice lies. In a college philosophy course, he asked the professor, how do I know if the blue I see is the blue you see? Apparently, this blew his mind, upsetting him so much that he retired early. He can bench press 1,000 pounds, and could do even more if he didn't have gout. He can read print with his fingertips, like Daredevil. He's so good at picking up women that he stopped doing it because it got boring. He used to be involved in a dog fighting ring, and his dog would never lose, because he taught it hypnosis. He created SpongeBob, despite it being 3 years older than him. Yeah, the kid was really something. One day my ex-girlfriend brought home a black cat. She told me that she and her mom found this cat in an abandoned house that her mom saw from the road and wanted to see if it was suitable for living. Her mom is a realtor for low-income individuals. She told me that we had to take care of this cat for a couple weeks before we could figure out what to do with it. We already had 3 cats at the time, which is already stretching it a bit in apartment living, not to mention a violation of our lease. Now, I don't know if she forgot or what, but right when we started dating she had to get some things from her ex-boyfriend's apartment when he wasn't home. I came along because she assured me he wasn't home, and I figured, what the heck. Her ex-boyfriend had a black cat. This was a cat, and I could instantly tell. The lie's excuses began compounding when I did some research about what to do with the cat. I looked into reputable shelters and found some that would clearly be good choices. Her reply: no, it's my responsibility to figure out what to do with the cat because I found it. What? I then told her my brother offered to take the cat. Her reply: I don't really like your brother. I then told her my parents offered to take the cat. Her reply: driving 2 hours in the car will make the cat too scared. After about a week of this, I told her I knew the cat was her ex-boyfriend's cat. I knew that he, a drug addict and general douche, must have lost his housing or something, and now we're taking care of his cat because he had no one else to call. I told her I knew this instantly and wanted her to admit her lie to me instead of me forcing it out of her. She then got super mad and started screaming at me that I'll let her carry on lying to me for a week. Her house was for sale on eBay. An exchange student in her house was her estranged brother. Then he was her boyfriend and we'd all misheard that he was her brother. She was half Dutch, a quarter African and a quarter Spanish. She looked like the lead singer of the Rasmus except with very thin, brown hair instead of black. A friend of mine told her household bleach was the same as hairdresser's bleach. She dyed a patch of her hair and it fell out, so she wore a headscarf and said she had cancer. She qualified for Junior Spanish Eurovision. When asked why she wasn't in any of the photos she stole from internet, we were told everyone was too busy rehearsing to photograph her. Her dad owned an airline. She's a Spanish princess. Or maybe she was an African princess. Maybe both. She spoke Dutch, Spanish and English fluently, was regularly caught out by native speakers, still continued claiming it was true, it's a different dialect etc. She got the highest possible marks in our final exams, got a scholarship for one of the most prestigious colleges in our country, but was putting it off for a year to focus on singing. She was still knocking around the town 3 years later. She knew loads of celebrities and the badly photoshopped pictures of her with them were proof. She added random symbols to her name to make it look more Dutch. For example, she added an E with Karen and a German O diaresis into her surname, yet still pronounced it as it was prior to the symbol addition. Due to her African heritage, she thought the black girls in our school would be cool with her calling them the N-word. One punched her in the face and broke her contact lens in her eye. Cool. Except she kept switching which eye was closed when she didn't think anyone was looking. Oh. She was a rapper and showed me and a mate one of her raps. It was that I wear khaki pants. My middle name's Lance. My grandma's from France, Rat from Scary Movie 3. She was the most ridiculous person ever, but the lies were hilarious. Oh boy, have I been waiting for this. Okay, let's say my friend is BR. Well, one day, me and BR were at school and eating lunch with a couple of friends. He decides to tell us a story of what happened to him at a local flea market. Before we start the main part of the story, let me say that selling any kind of animals at the flea market is not allowed. Anyway, BR says he was at the flea market and looking around and a guy came up to him and asked him very quietly if he wanted to buy a iguana. He said yes. BR and the man wander around until they can find a quiet spot with a few empty tables. Turns out the reason for this was because the man has the iguanas in his prosthetic leg. As you can see, this is where I stopped believing him, but I kept listening because I thought it was funny. So the man dumps all the iguanas out onto the table in front of them. The man starts going through them telling BR which ones he likes when one of the iguanas turns around and bites the man. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, a man smuggling iguanas in a prosthetic leg gets bit by one. Okay, highly unlikely, but I guess it could happen. Yeah, you're right. But this was no ordinary iguana, it was a miracle iguana. BR proceeds to tell me that when the iguana bit the man, it must have given him chemo because he started acting sick after it bit him. Now, I'm not sure who he thought he was fooling at this point, but it wasn't me. I called him out. I said, BR, you know chemo is a cancer treatment, not a disease, right? He said, oh, it is? It must have been Lyme disease then. I said nope, Lyme disease mainly comes from ticks. He said okay. Then bird flu. I started getting ready to say the very obvious comeback and before I even got finished, he interrupted with yeah, I know, it comes from birds. But yeah, this is by far my favorite story he's ever told me. He lied so much like this. I got to the point when I didn't believe anything he said without seeing proof of it, and even then I was skeptical. Hit by a bus 5 times and was born in Australia but never travelled in his life. We're in England. Maybe that last bus hit him so hard he flew halfway across the planet. Not told directly to me, but to other people, that she has leukemia, therefore she's not able to get pregnant, then accusing someone of getting her pregnant, saying that her brother died, then posting a picture with him the next day. She was probably the worst compulsive liar I've ever met. I mean, if you're going to lie, at least make your stories consistent. His dad was the manager of AC/DC. I knew his dad. He wasn't. He watched a bunch of soldiers get killed by king cobras in Egypt. He got bitten by a great white shark in the leg but he killed it with a knife. That he was 300 years old and used to be the king of my backyard. We might have been 6 years old but I saw through your dirty lies, Sam. Kid was 200 years old at best. That she vomited up her baby and that's why she was no longer pregnant. Not me, but a professor. My professor taught screenwriting, woot woot film school, and one day he decided to go out and find the next Hollywood blockbuster or whatever. Eventually, he was contacted by a neighboring college about this woman on their swim team that had an amazing story. He goes to check it out. There, he meets a woman balding from chemotherapy, I think in her 40s. He never told us her age, but based on her life story, she had to be on the older side. When my professor asked her about her life, she opened up to him. She was ex-Navy and was honorably discharged due to a mission gone wrong. Basically, her and the other soldiers were disarming bombs of some type, can't remember if they were landmines or the ones that float around in the sea. Many of her friends and teammates died, including the one dude having an affair with her. She claimed the US government would never let the story leak. Afterwards, my professor and this woman continued talking about her life. She had a journal in which she recorded everything that happened. He would sometimes take her to the hospital so that she could encourage other cancer patients to stay strong during their ordeal, and also for chemo treatments. Things became weird when my professor couldn't find anyone to back her story up. Everyone who'd know about the botched mission was dead, and her friends would mysteriously cancel meetings at the last minute. My professor didn't want to doubt the story of a brave soldier recovering from cancer, but it was just too weird. So, he called the high school she told him she attended to check out her story. There was no record of her attendance at the high school. Of course, my professor confronted her about it. She immediately turned tail and ran. Months later, He saw her picture on the cover of a sports magazine. She was a blind skier now. Turns out, that woman didn't even have cancer. She spent hours at the hospital to keep up the act and even gave talks to real cancer patients about hope. He told me he was the head of the Yakuza clan and they want him to go back to Cali to run it. He also told me he was raised by Buddhist monks, and his mom's a terrible person who hates him. He's Cambodian. He has the patience of a 6-year-old, and his mom used to give him a couple hundred every month when he roomed with one of my best friends. He honestly thinks we believe him. One of my co-workers is legendary for fantastic tales. As a child, he visited an Italian deli where the mafia don sat in the back of the store. Each customer would kiss his ring as they passed by. While serving as a major in the Marines, he realized he left his lunch at home. No problem. He borrowed a Black Hawk, flew to his house and rappelled down to pick it up. We work for the railroad and our freight line passes right next to the Milwaukee airport. Several years ago, a plane came in too low and its wheels scuffed the roof of the locomotive as it passed over, and many more. Greg. Greg was a compulsive liar, the likes of which have never been witnessed before on this planet. Greg had many a fable that he tried to convince us were true. Some of his more popular ones. He'd lost his virginity when he was 13 in France. His dad was a notorious biker gangster. He was wanted by local drug dealers for beating someone up. He's had to beat someone with a bat for giving his sister crap. I could go on with the list, but there was one time that sticks with us the most. It was Greg's 16th birthday, and we were all round his house having a few beers and whatnot. As the evening went on, Greg's cousin wanted to go home. She lived 5 minutes walk away, so he and another friend walked her home. On the journey to her house, they pass a local bar, where there's usually fights and whatnot, and it was getting heated out the front. Greg, being the superhero that he is, decided to intervene and stop these Goliaths trying to kill one another. When he got home, he recited a story with pure passion. I ran in there, told them to calm down, and this one geezer was having none of it, and swung at me. So I ducked and hit him in the stomach and he dropped, and I booted another guy in the chest and headbutted him. Then he tried to get up, so I got him in a chokehold and choked him the frick out. Whilst telling this story, and demonstrating the different hits he dealt out, my friend who was with them was waiting patiently behind him to finish his story. Once Greg was finished with his little recap of events, my friend loud and clearly stated no. Greg walked up, someone swung at him, missed, Greg fell over anyway, so we walked back. Even Greg's mom was shocked at his level of commitment to his own lies. Ants got into your food so I had to throw it out. Did they? Steve, did they? You have been visited by the magical sugar jar Puggo. He'll only share his sweetener if you comment sugar please, Mr. Papa. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.